He told me I was too ugly to be in the wedding photos. So I smiled, let him have his perfect day, and then I took back everything he thought I'd leave behind. Have you ever been pushed aside by someone you love just because you didn't fit into the picture they had in mind? That's exactly what happened to me, until I decided I'm the one who gets to frame the picture. What would you do if your own child erased you from the most important day of their life? Tell me in the comments. I'm here. And now, let me tell you what really happened. I was buttoning up my lavender blouse. My fingers were shaking a little. The pearl buttons were still there, though one had started to come loose over the years. I remembered how Marcus used to play with them when he was little, sitting in my lap, twisting them between his fingers. That memory used to warm me. But not today. Today I just brushed some lint off the hem and checked myself in the mirror in the hallway. I had on a soft blue-gray scarf that matched my eyes, but even I had to admit it couldn't hide how pale I looked. Still, I made the effort. I brought out the good china. I even baked a fresh batch of snickerdoodles. The smell of cinnamon and butter filled the house, just like the old winter days when Marcus would sneak a cookie before they cooled. I smiled at the thought and straightened the tablecloth. He hadn't been home in months, always had an excuse, work, travel, the wedding. But today he was coming, and he was bringing her, Aubrey. I'd only met her twice. She was beautiful, polished, always polite. But there was something distant in the way she smiled, like she was sizing everything up. When their car pulled in, I stood at the door and smoothed my blouse one last time. Marcus looked tired. He's built like his father now, broad shoulders, standing tall, wearing a navy suit, even though it was just Saturday afternoon. Aubrey followed behind him. Her heels tapped softly on the wooden floor. She wore a pale beige dress, not a single hair out of place. We sat down, had some tea, chit-chatted a bit. I offered cookies. They politely declined. The air felt thin, like someone had opened a window I couldn't see. Aubrey complimented the curtains. Marcus just nodded, and then came the shift. "I wanted to talk to you about the wedding," Marcus said. His voice was calm but short. I nodded. "Of course. I've been wondering where I should sit, if you'd like me to come early to help." He cleared his throat. "Actually, Mom, we talked it over, and we think it might be better if you didn't attend." My hand froze, still wrapped around my teacup. Aubrey leaned in a little. "It's just, the wedding is going to have a very curated aesthetic. Clean lines, soft pastels, and, well," her eyes flicked toward my scarf. "We're worried it might mess with the vibe." "The vibe?" I repeated. Marcus looked down, then back at me. "You've been through a lot. We think it might be too overwhelming." "I could sit in the back," I said. "I don't need to be in the photos. I'd just like to be there." They glanced at each other. "It's not just that," Marcus said. And then, like it didn't even matter, he added, "This is why Dad left you." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just looked at him, trying to understand who this person was sitting across from me, who he'd become. "I see," I finally said. My voice was calm, even though my chest was burning. "Thank you for showing me who you really are." They didn't say a word. When they left, the door closed more gently than I expected. I stood there for a long time. The smell of cookies still hung in the air. The tea was untouched. I didn't cry. Not then. It was only later that I noticed one of the pearl buttons had fallen off. It was lying on the floor. I left it there. I didn't cry. I didn't yell or slam any doors. When the quiet settled back into the house, like fog slipping in through the cracks, I just walked to the back bedroom. I passed by old photos of my mom's garden club and that quilt I'd hung more for warmth than for looks. I reached under it and opened the old walnut cabinet I hadn't touched in years. Inside were folders nobody knew about, papers stacked with decades of choices, deeds, bonds, bank statements, a photo of the first house I ever bought, Marcus was 5, 2 bedrooms, a crooked porch, peeling shutters. I saved for 3 years just to make that down payment, painted every single wall myself. I pulled out a manila folder labeled Estate, M. Walker. Its corners were soft with age. I sat down on the bed and opened it. The pages moved like ghosts. There it was, my old will, so careful, so generous. Everything meant for him, both of my houses, my shares in the salon where I once styled 3 generations of women, even that envelope of emergency cash I'd stashed in the sewing drawer, hidden between unused spools of thread. Back then I called it love. I kept telling myself, he's young. He'll grow into the kind of man who remembers who got him there. But tonight, I felt something inside me give way, like a rope going slack. My eyes stopped on the name of my ex-husband, Michael. He didn't leave a note when he walked out, just grabbed a duffel bag, took the car, and said, "You'll figure it out?" And I did. I raised Marcus with coupons, secondhand shoes, worked 6 days a week, and still found time to volunteer at Rosehaven, feeding women who had even less than I did. Marcus never knew the whole story about Michael. I protected him, gave him a softened version of the man who walked away. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe that's why he thinks people like me are easy to erase. I opened the drawer, pulled out a pen. My hand was steady when I wrote across the top of the will, void. Then I folded it in half. I didn't tear it. It just wasn't true anymore. The cordless phone was still sitting by the hallway table, next to that recipe box I hadn't touched since last Thanksgiving. I picked it up and dialed Carolyn's number. It only rang twice. "Diane?" Her voice was warm, just like always. "I need to rewrite everything," I told her. She didn't hesitate. "I'll bring the new documents in the morning," she said. "Let's make this right." I hung up and just stood there for a moment in the silence, staring into the years I'd spent waiting to be seen. Then I walked over to my writing desk and pulled out a fresh sheet of stationery, pale blue trim, faint scent of roses. I addressed it to the Rosehaven Foundation. It had been a while, but I knew Margot, the director, still remembered me. I began to write. "Dear Margot, I hope this finds you well. I've been thinking about legacies." The wind outside rustled through the magnolia branches. The house creaked, like it was waking up with me. I folded the letter and set it aside, and almost without meaning to, I whispered into the quiet, "He took me out of the pictures. Now I'm taking him out of the future." And for the first time in a long time, I felt steady. 4 days before the wedding, a thick ivory envelope slid through my mail slot and landed on the rug with a soft thump. Gold script on the front said, "Mrs. Diane Walker." It was elegant, impersonal, and definitely not in my son's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I tossed a load of towels into the dryer, wiped down the counters, and poured myself a glass of iced tea. I only opened the envelope once the ice had started to melt and sweat down the sides of the glass. Inside was a card. "Aunt Michelle and family cordially invite you to witness the union of Marcus Walker and Aubrey Collins. Please join us. Quietly, quietly." I almost laughed. That one word said it all. A polite little hope that I'd stay invisible. I propped the invitation against the sugar bowl and let it stare at me while I kept on with my chores. Sunlight poured through the kitchen windows, catching dust I'd missed. It was a bright spring day, dogwoods in bloom, lawnmowers buzzing in the distance, the kind of day that makes it easy to pretend everything's fine. By mid-afternoon, Carolyn showed up in her usual sensible flats, carrying a briefcase that looked too serious for the occasion. We sat at the same dining table, where just a week ago, Marcus had turned down my tea. Now, that table held 2 copies of my new will, a notarized letter to the Rosehaven Foundation, and a manila envelope addressed in neat block letters, "To Marcus Walker, open after the ceremony." Carolyn tapped her pen on each page. "Sign here and here, one last initial." Her voice was steady, but I saw her jaw tighten when she caught sight of the invitation still sitting on the counter. When it was all signed, I slid everything into the envelope and pressed the clasp shut with my palm. Seal of approval, I said quietly. Carolyn let out a breath. You sure you're up for the trip? I'm not missing my son's wedding, I told her as I tied the string around the envelope. He just won't like the seat I pick. Upstairs, I laid my clothes out on the bed, one piece at a time. The soft gray Easter suit I wore on Sundays when the hymns still felt hopeful. The silver dove brooch my mother pinned on my graduation gown, and a navy scarf threaded with silver that shimmered like frost in the morning light. I ran my thumb across it. It felt like a mix between a prayer and a promise. Back in the kitchen, Carolyn packed a small purse, tissues, a bottle of water, 2 peppermints, and a spare pair of reading glasses. She moved gently, like a nurse in a room where someone's still sleeping. We poured tea, no cookies this time, just silence. Outside, a mockingbird rustled through a lilac bush, singing a song that weirdly sounded like a car alarm. Carolyn finally spoke. He may never understand why you're doing this. Understanding's not required, I said, tracing the rim of my cup, but memory is. Later, I stood in front of the hallway mirror. Chemo had thinned my eyebrows and left dark circles under my eyes, but the suit still fit, and the brooch still sparkled. I adjusted the scarf, this time letting it frame my face, not cover it. Then I looked at my reflection and said, let him smile. He thinks he's already won. We'll give him this one photo. I left a note on the kitchen counter, folded once. If I don't come back, it's not because I'm lost. I didn't sign it. Anyone who mattered would know the handwriting. Carolyn was waiting at the door, keys in hand. Ready? She asked. I nodded and picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than it should have, like it was carrying years, not pages. Let's go watch a wedding, I said. And we stepped into the bright Savannah afternoon, leaving the quiet house and the invitation behind us. If this story stirs something quiet in you, maybe a moment when you felt pushed aside or finally chose yourself, share a line below. I read every word like it's a whispered secret from a friend, and your voices remind me I'm not just speaking into an empty room. Tap subscribe if you want to keep walking this road with me. I promise, the next turn holds more than just a pretty wedding smile. And tell me, have you ever folded up a piece of your past and sealed it in an envelope? I'm listening. Charleston welcomed us with the smell of wisteria and sea air. It was warm, sweet, a little salty, like the city hadn't quite decided which season it wanted to be in. The vineyard sat just past a set of iron gates with a gravel driveway winding through neat rows of muscadine vines. Strings of Edison bulbs were already glowing in the late afternoon light. Everywhere you looked, someone was arranging something. Roses in short vases, ivory programs on chairs, smiles onto carefully powdered faces. Marcus used to say he wanted to get married under a live oak, bare feet in the grass, sunlight coming through the Spanish moss. But today there was no tree, just a wooden arch wrapped in white roses, placed just so the sunset would hit it like a filter. I guess somewhere along the way, the look outran the love. Carolyn and I got there early enough that no one questioned us. We walked in like women who belonged wherever they were standing. Then we picked seats in the third row, close enough to see their faces, far enough to stay invisible. My navy scarf, the one with silver thread, sat folded in my lap like a sleeping bird. I could feel the weight of the manila envelope in Carolyn's purse right next to my knee. It felt solid, final. The guests started to drift in, wearing pastels and linen, sipping glasses of pink champagne. Their voices floated just above a whisper. You could tell they'd practiced sounding effortless. A jazz quartet was playing something light. Gershwin, maybe. I let the music float over me without pulling me in. The ceremony started right on time. Of course it did. Marcus stood at the front in a sleek black tux, boutonniere centered just right. He didn't look around. A photographer hovered near him, checking angles, capturing that careful half smile. Aubrey walked down the aisle on her father's arm. She looked polished. Lace, gloss, subtle designer everything. Her eyes found the camera before they found Marcus. The officiant started talking about the sacredness of partnership, about honoring the people who raised us. I watched Marcus then, watched a tiny muscle twitch in his jaw as he looked toward the middle distance, anywhere but the front rows, where parents usually sit. If anyone noticed the empty first row, they didn't say a word. Aubrey's vows trembled just enough. She dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Marcus said his like a man giving a quarterly update, clear, confident, and eager to wrap it up. Cameras clicked. The vineyard air buzzed. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. Just still. So still it almost echoed inside me. I thought I'd feel something, a pang, a protest from the part of me that used to braid his hair after swim practice, or the one who kept the porch light on until he came home. But no, I just sat there steady as bedrock while they promised each other forever beneath store-bought roses. Then came the words, "By the power vested in me," and like clockwork the audience leaned in. Marcus and Aubrey kissed. A brief, tasteful press of lips. Applause followed, soft and practiced. Camera shutters fluttered. Carolyn leaned in. Her perfume carried a trace of cedar, and something else, resolve. I met her eyes and gave a small nod. Just enough. And with that, the plan began to breathe. The recessional started. The picture-perfect couple turned and started back up the aisle, grinning like they'd just won something. Phones tilted up to catch every step. Everyone stood, except me. I stayed seated and slipped the scarf from my lap. The silk felt cool against my fingers. I folded it once, then again, and laid it across the empty chair next to me, a quiet way to mark the space that was mine. As Marcus passed, sunlight catching on his cufflinks, I said just loud enough for Carolyn to hear, "I hope the photographer got his good side." She smiled, just barely, then stepped into the aisle, envelope in hand, steady as a verdict. Carolyn moved like gospel, not loud, not rushed, just steady, like truth showing up right on time. She made her way through clusters of guests with this quiet grace that made people step aside. Even though the manila envelope in her hand, it held nothing gentle. I watched from my seat, keeping my eyes on Marcus's face the moment he spotted her. For a second, he smiled. Maybe he thought it was a surprise gift, a letter from some distant friend. He reached out for it, casual, like he used to sneak an extra dessert when he thought I wasn't looking. Carolyn didn't say a word. She handed him the large envelope, then turned to Aubrey and gave her a smaller one, unsealed, two motions, simple, clean, like punctuation at the end of a sentence. Marcus glanced down, confused by the weight. The string clasp resisted just a little, then gave. Out came a stack of documents, legal, notarized with his name on them, and a handwritten letter, folded twice. He froze reading the first lines. His eyes jumped from page to page, like they were trying to find somewhere safe to land. "What is this?" he muttered. Aubrey flipped her note open with one quick motion. Her brow furrowed. Her lips moved silently as she read the single line. Again and again. "He has nothing now. Choose wisely." The music stumbled, then stopped. Guests turned to look, heads tilted like birds sensing a change in the wind. Someone near the cake table raised their phone. Another whispered, "Is that his mom's friend?" Marcus's hands shook. He flipped through the papers, catching the words, "Revoked, irrevocable transfer, Rosehaven Foundation." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just dry breath. A small shake of the head, like the ground had shifted under him. Maybe, in that moment, he remembered what I used to say when he was scared as a kid. "Don't worry, baby. Mama's always got your back." He would have believed that, even now. Right up until the last line of the letter. I had your back until you handed me your absence and called it love. Aubrey stepped back, holding the note like it was something spoiled. Her eyes flashed with something sharp and old. Embarrassment, rage, maybe survival. You let her ruin this, she hissed. He grabbed for her arm. She pulled away and threw down her bouquet. The sound cracked through the air, louder than it had any right to be. Phones were everywhere now. A cousin from her side was filming the whole thing, no shame, zooming in. Marcus looked up, dazed, scanning the crowd like he could find the moment it all fell apart and rewind it. He spun in a full circle, once, then again, and only then did he see the third row, where I'd been sitting, now empty, just the navy scarf left folded perfectly across the chair, like a quiet signature. Carolyn was already gone, walking calmly back toward the parking lot the same way she came in. The reception tent buzzed with low, confused energy. People whispered, drinks half raised, forgotten. Somewhere in the background, a server dropped a tray of champagne glasses. Aubrey vanished behind a hedge of hydrangeas, her heels clicking like punctuation marks at the end of a story. And Marcus, he stood alone, right in the center of a day that was supposed to be perfect. I was already halfway down the gravel path when I heard someone call his name. It wasn't me. The golden hour hung over the vineyard, lighting the roses in a soft glow they hadn't earned. I kept walking. I didn't look back. Let him smile for the cameras. Let him figure out how to explain it all. The scarf said enough. And somewhere, I hoped the wind would carry the whisper. She didn't cry. She didn't curse. She just rewrote the ending. By morning, a video titled Mother of the Groom Gets Last Word literally had quietly picked up 22,000 views. Just a short clip, 2 envelopes, a few gasps, a bouquet hitting the grass. Not exactly front page news, but in certain corners of the internet, wedding forums, caregiver groups, a subreddit about starting over later in life, it was enough. Marcus must have seen it before his first cup of coffee. His name wasn't trending, but the comments below said more than any headline ever could. He disinvited his own mother? She sat there like a ghost. The scarf, though, I felt that. He called Carolyn first, straight to voicemail, texted her twice, nothing. Tried again, still no reply. Then he emailed the Rosehaven Foundation. They sent back a single line, all transfers finalized, no reversals permitted. I didn't see any of this, of course. By then, I was already packing, folding my last sweater into the old duffel bag, the one with frayed corners and faded stitching that read South Carolina Women's Retreat, 2012. That bag had once carried casseroles and sympathy cards. Now it held clean socks and the last small pieces of a life I no longer needed to carry. The sky over Savannah was soft gray, one of those mornings where everything feels quieter. A little drizzle tapped against the windows, like second thoughts trying to get in. I moved through the house slowly, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to feel every step of leaving. The photo album stayed. So did the china. I left a letter in the drawer where Marcus used to hide birthday cards. Nothing dramatic, just a few paragraphs and one final truth. Sometimes, when a door stays open too long, the wind takes everything you love right through it. I slipped the house key off my ring and set it gently on the kitchen table next to the envelope. Then I walked out. I didn't look back. At the train station, a few early travelers stood around with foam cups, murmuring about the weather. The platform smelled like coffee and damp concrete. I found a seat by the window and waited for the 6:10 to Charleston. A woman across from me offered a quiet nod and a small smile. Maybe 30, maybe kind. She didn't ask anything, and I didn't offer anything back. Somewhere between the whistle and the motion, I closed my eyes and let the rhythm of the rails settle in my bones. I didn't think about the wedding. I didn't think about Marcus. I thought about the ocean. and the way salt air can make your skin feel new. Later that same morning, Marcus pulled into my driveway. He didn't run, he walked, like a man approaching a house he once knew by heart but hadn't been allowed into in years. The front door creaked open at his touch. The rooms inside still held their usual quiet, but now it was a different kind of quiet, emptier. He called out once, "Mom?" The word dropped like a stone into a dry well. In the kitchen, he found a yellow post-it on the fridge. My handwriting. I left the door open long enough. He stood there for a long time, not rereading it, just holding it, like if he waited long enough the words might change. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, I was sitting at a small cafe by the sea in a town where no one knew my name. The air smelled like fresh bread and sea spray. A waiter came by. "Name for the order?" he asked. I smiled just a little. "Ellie," I said. Just that, and the wind, as if it understood, moved gently across the water, like it was turning a page. If you've ever packed a suitcase not just with clothes, but with the pieces of the life you've outgrown, then maybe you know what I did. I didn't leave to run, I left to breathe. So tell me, have you ever walked away from something that stopped seeing you? Share your story below. I read every word like a letter from a room I used to live in, and if you're wondering where I'm headed next, stay close. The story's not over, not yet. 3 days after the wedding, my obituary ran in the Savannah Chronicle. It was short, no photo, no flowery language, just my name, 2 dates, and one quiet line: "She is at peace now." That was the point. I didn't expect Marcus to see it, not right away. But he did. A coworker handed him the paper during lunch, probably said something like, "Hey, isn't this your mom?" It must have landed like a wrong note in a song he thought he knew. Off key, but impossible to ignore. His fork paused midair. His voice caught. I wasn't there to witness it. I didn't need to be. Some silences speak louder when they're left alone. Back in Savannah, the house no longer smelled like tea or lemon polish. It didn't smell like anything at all. Marcus stood on the porch, key in hand, probably thinking everything would be the same, my shoes by the door, a lamp on in the front room. But I'd taken every memory that belonged to me and left behind only what never really did. When he walked in, the living room echoed. There was still a shoebox on the hallway table, labeled in my handwriting, "Letters for Marcus." But when he opened it, it was empty. No birthday cards, no crayon drawings, no note signed "Love, Mom." He didn't know I'd been out in the backyard 2 weeks earlier, holding a lighter in one hand and decades of paper in the other. He didn't see the wind catch those flames, how they lifted like tiny farewells. I only cried once, when a corner of his high school graduation letter curled into the shape of a heart before it turned to ash. Carolyn told him the rest. She didn't soften the truth. The house is sold. The will is final. The donations are confirmed. Her voice was calm, but sharp. It left marks. He asked questions. She didn't answer. He asked again. Then he just stood there, holding the phone to his ear, breathing like someone trying not to drown. By then, I was a continent away, watching the tide roll in from the window of a rented flat. The sea outside was wide and gray. The coffee in my hand was dark, bitter, just the way I like it. Headlines didn't touch me, neither did gossip. But still, I heard one. At a cafe in Savannah, 2 older women sat near the window, fingers wrapped around porcelain mugs. One leaned in and said, not unkindly, "She gave everything to strangers, and he gave her nothing." Marcus heard it too. He was behind them, waiting for a coffee he no longer wanted. He didn't speak, didn't correct her. He just turned around and walked out. The doorbell behind him chimed like the last bell at a funeral no one showed up for. Some deaths don't need bodies, just a moment when the air shifts, and someone realizes they've lost something they never tried to hold on to. I wasn't angry. That part had burned with the letters, but I wasn't going back. That morning, I stirred my coffee slowly. The spoon made soft little circles in the cup. The woman behind the counter asked if I needed anything else. No, I said gently. I think I have everything I need. And across the sea, the sky opened just enough to let the light find me. Mia smells like oranges and sea salt, the kind of scent that doesn't just pass by. It lingers on your clothes, not like perfume, more like memory. I don't use my real name here. At the bakery, they call me Elena. The florist just nods and says, Senora, and honestly, it fits. In this town, I'm not someone's mother. I'm not someone's ex-wife. I'm not a grieving woman half smiling in old photographs. I'm just a woman who buys bread before the sun gets too bold. I used to believe peace was something you had to earn, through pain, through silence, through putting everyone else first. But now I know you just have to stop giving it away to people who never knew how to hold it. Mornings start early here. The terracotta rooftops catch the sunlight slowly like they're warming up for the day. I water the rosemary on my windowsill, sometimes talking to it in half-finished thoughts. There's a ginger cat who sleeps on the wall across from my kitchen. He doesn't beg. He just exists. We understand each other. My Spanish is terrible, but the woman at the corner cafe understands when I ask for pan con tomate. She even adds a little extra olive oil now. I think she knows I'm alone. And kind people, real kind people, they feed the lonely without needing a reason. I don't write to Marcus. I don't think of him with bitterness, just quietly, like an echo that fades more each time I forget to remember. But I do write. Every few days I start a postcard I know I'll never send. Once I wrote, "The sun here is kind. I'm learning how to sleep without dreaming of closed doors." I sign them all the same, from someone who finally remembered her own name. Yesterday, I got a letter from Rose Haven. The envelope was thick, the kind that tells you whatever's inside matters. I opened it slowly, careful at the crease. Inside was a photo. 10 women stood beneath a new sign that read Walker House. Some held brooms. One held a baby. All of them wore aprons. All of them were smiling, soft and proud. Beneath the photo, someone had written in looping script, "She saw us." I held that photo like it might break, but it didn't. It felt steady. More steady than Marcus's rejection. More steady than Aubrey's polite little smile. More steady than all those teacups I'd cleared from tables where no one ever stayed long enough to really listen. They renamed the place after me. I didn't ask for that. I just gave what I could and hoped someone might build something warm from it, and they did. That night, I sat by the open window. The breeze carried jasmine and laughter from the plaza. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. Not a letter for anyone else, just for me. I wanted to say thank you, not for surviving, but for finally choosing something gentler than shame and louder than silence. I wrote, "I used to think the end of a story was the part where everything closes, but maybe it's just where things soften." I folded the note and tucked it into the drawer where I keep a photo of a little boy holding a toy car. I don't open that drawer often, but I don't lock it either. Outside, the church bell rang once, just enough to mark the hour, and I smiled, just enough to feel it. I wrote it in blue ink, not out of anger, not even sadness, just to remember how my voice sounds when it's only meant for me. The sun had just started to dip behind the terracotta rooftops of Mias. The light was shifting, gold turning into lavender, that soft kind of light that smooths the edges of everything it touches. I sat at my little desk by the open window, the one with the crooked leg and chipped drawer. I laid the paper flat, one gentle crease down the middle. It started like this: "Dear Marcus." And then I paused. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because, for the first time, I finally did. You were the first chapter of the longest book I ever wrote. I stitched your baby clothes in the same chair where I used to read you fairy tales. I smiled when you outgrew me. I stayed silent when you outgrew kindness. The pen moved across the page, steady. No rush, no shaking. I loved you more than you'll ever understand, and I kept loving you long after you made it clear I wasn't part of your future. So I let go, not to punish you, but to free myself. A breeze slipped through the curtains, lifting the edge of the page, like even the wind wanted to read along. Somewhere in the distance, someone was playing guitar, slow, steady chords. A neighbor's dog barked once, then went quiet again. I signed the letter with my old name, Mom, but just for me. Then I folded the paper, once, twice. My hands didn't shake. Next to the desk, I had this little ceramic dish, picked it up at the Tuesday market. I lit a match, held it under the fold. The flame caught fast. The paper curled like an autumn leaf. I watched the words lift into smoke, dance a little, then disappear. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't meant to be. No tears, no gasps, no sobbing into my sleeve, just ash and peace. People talk about closure like it's something someone else has to give you, like it's a door they need to open. But I've learned closure is just the quiet decision to stop knocking, to let that hallway stay dark, and to turn toward the light coming from another room. As the last ember went out, I let out a breath. Not relief, just release. Then I picked up my journal, the one with the worn leather cover and that faint scent of lemon balm from the time it sat too close to the tea, and I wrote one sentence on the last page: not resting in peace, living in it. I underlined the word living. Outside, down on the street, someone called my name, not the one I was born with, not the one I used for decades, but the one I chose, Ellie. And it sounded soft, simple, like kindness, spoken out loud. I smiled and stood up. My shawl slipped off the back of the chair as I reached for the door. Coming, I said, and I meant it. If you've ever held on too long to an old letter, a silence, or a hope that started to hurt, you'll understand what I did tonight. Tell me, what's something you finally let go of just for your own peace? Share it in the comments. No judgment here, just quiet company. And if you're wondering where life leads after the ashes settle, stay with me. The next part is softer, but it still matters. They named the place after me. I didn't ask, didn't even hint. But sometimes the quietest gifts are the ones that echo the loudest. A friend from Rosehaven sent me a link to the live stream. The thumbnail showed a freshly painted sign, Walker House, in deep green letters. Ivy curled around the W like it had just been waiting for the right name all along. I sat at my little kitchen table in Spain, hands wrapped around a mug of mint tea. The breeze carried in the smell of salt through the shutters. On screen, autumn sunlight slid across a brick building I once knew by heart. The facade looked brighter now. The windows were trimmed in sky blue. A paper banner fluttered above the doorway, each triangle cut by hand, probably late into the night. Because that's how women do it, one careful snip at a time until celebration takes shape. The camera moved to the courtyard, new benches painted the color of marigolds, a mural, open hands holding tiny forget-me-nots, rosemary beds already catching the breeze. I could almost smell it, sharp and clean, hopeful. A reporter stood in front of the camera in a tweed jacket, his voice full of morning energy. Today marks the reopening of Rosehaven, now renamed Walker House after the late philanthropist Diane Walker. Late? The word passed by gently, and no one corrected it. I didn't either. Some truths do more good as myth. Behind the ribbon stood a group of women, residents, staff, volunteers, each one holding scissors tied with navy bows. I saw Margot from the old days, gray now streaked through her braids, her posture full of quiet pride. One by one, the women stepped up to a little podium and told small stories. How new walls helped them sleep through the night, how an herb garden reminded them of their grandmothers, how a washer that didn't eat quarters felt like winning back a little piece of dignity. Then Margot held up a framed page and turned it to the camera. It was my handwriting, shaky but strong. We deserve more than survival. They'd mounted that journal page on the front wall. I touched my chest without meaning to, surprised at how steady my heartbeat felt. And somewhere else, in a different room, Marcus was watching too. I know because a cousin sent a photo. He was sitting stiff on a couch, suit jacket off, tie loosened, staring at the screen like if he looked hard enough, maybe the story would change. Before the speeches ended, he closed the tablet and set it face down. Even turned off, screens can burn. Back on the live stream, a young woman stepped up to the mic. Maybe 22, maybe older than her years. She wore an apron with navy paint spattered across it. She never wanted credit, she said, her voice steady. She just wanted us to have what she didn't. The applause came like rain on canvas, soft, sure, and full of meaning. When the ribbon finally dropped, the camera drifted to the center of the courtyard. There, under a pergola laced with fairy lights, sat a simple wooden chair. Draped across it was a navy scarf threaded with silver, just like the one I'd folded over a wedding chair months ago. A small brass plaque read, "This seat is hers, and now it's yours." I let out a breath and smiled without even realizing it. In the background, volunteers were kneeling, pressing seedlings into fresh soil, thyme, basil, sage. Their hands moved with quiet purpose. The feed didn't end on faces. It ended on those hands. Dark, light, wrinkled, smooth, all of them planting what would last longer than memory. I closed the laptop and sat there for a while in the hush of my little kitchen. Outside, the church bells rang once. No sermon, no ceremony, just a soft chime to mark the hour. The tea had gone lukewarm, but I drank it anyway, tasting mint and something brighter. Turns out, legacy doesn't need marble or headlines. Sometimes it lives in a garden bed or folds itself gently over the back of a chair, waiting for the next tired soul to sit down and finally breathe. Javier calls me Senora D. He's never asked what the D stands for. I think he probably guesses something like Dolores, Daniela, maybe even Destiny, though that'd be a stretch. Either way, I let him decide. That's the thing about starting over. You get to leave some answers blank. Every morning, I walk the same cobblestone path to his bakery. Mijas wakes up slowly in winter. The sun moves gently across the clay rooftops, and the air smells like oranges and something warm rising in an oven. I bring my own cloth bag, and he always tucks in the same round loaf, olive bread, still warm. He throws in a little extra for the cat, or, more accurately, the cat that tolerates me, when I come bearing food. She waits by the bench near the fountain, tail curled like punctuation. I break off a piece, place it beside her, and she pretends not to care. We have an understanding, the two of us. Two quiet souls who came here to be small, to be left alone, and to stay that way. There's a wedding being planned in the square. I saw the couple yesterday, softly arguing about flowers. They were standing under the old fig tree, the one that always smells like summer, even in December. He wanted blue hydrangeas. She insisted on lilies. I almost said something, wanted to tell them none of it would matter if they forgot to be kind to each other on the hard days. But I stayed quiet. Wisdom doesn't always need an audience. Today, a tourist asked me for directions to the bell tower. She was polite, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who probably still sends handwritten thank you notes. I pointed left, gave her 2 landmarks to follow, then slipped down a narrow alley. It felt like a small bit of magic, choosing invisibility and having it work. Back at home, I watered my rosemary bush. It's growing unevenly, the right side reaching more than the left. I think it leans toward the afternoon sun, but I let it be. I've stopped trimming things into shapes they don't want to grow into. There's a photo on the shelf near my window. It's not of Marcus, and it's not of me. It's a group of women in aprons standing beneath a garden sign that says Walker House. They're laughing, full-faced, real laughter. I keep that photo for the sound it doesn't make. Right underneath it, there's a sticky note I wrote to myself months ago. It says, "Remember who you chose." This afternoon, I open my passport, not to go anywhere, not to make plans, just to feel the weight of it in my hand. I flip through the pages, past the stamps, past the blanks. One of them still smells faintly of ink and salt. It reminded me I'm free now, not just from places, but from having to explain myself. In my journal, I wrote one last line before closing it. Peace isn't a prize, it's a place. Outside, the church bells started to ring, slow, deliberate, like the town itself was reminding us to exhale. I closed the journal and reached for a fresh slice of olive bread. Some mornings, that's all it takes to feel like you belong, a name no one questions, a bench shared with a cat, and a window that lets in more light than regret. I didn't die bitter. I lived with fire, and I left with grace. There's something sacred about a courtyard in the evening, the way shadows stretch long like deep breaths, the hush that settles before night fully arrives. My tea sits next to me on the stone table, steam curling into the dusk. A small lantern flickers nearby. Its flame sways gently with the breeze rustling the lemon leaves overhead. They used to call me a ghost. I heard it once, whispered behind a wine glass at the wedding. She just sat there like a ghost. But ghosts don't bake bread. Ghosts don't laugh at the baker's joke about burnt croissants. Ghosts don't kneel in the dirt to plant basil just because it smells like a better day. No, ghosts haunt. I chose to live. Tonight I lit a candle, not for ceremony, just for stillness. Its glow dances across the whitewashed wall beside me, warm, quiet, alive. There's no music playing, but I can hear the rhythm of the town. Kids laughing in a nearby courtyard, a motorbike climbing the hill, a dog shaking off its collar. Life, subtle but present. I reached for a scrap of paper I'd tucked into the back of my journal a long time ago. It's yellowed now, ink faded in places. I wrote it to myself before the scarf, before the train, before the name change. It said, "Don't shrink, don't disappear." I smiled at it, then held it over the candle. The flame caught quickly. The edges curled inward, soft like a leaf giving in to time. I watched it vanish, quietly, respectfully, just the way I used to imagine disappearing myself. But I didn't. I stayed, long enough to outgrow that version of me. The tea had cooled by now, but I didn't rush. I turned to the last page in my journal, wrote with a steady hand, "This is not an ending. This is arrival." No tears. I didn't need them. No regret, no ache. Just the simple, full feeling of breath in my chest, and nothing left to prove. Some people spend their whole lives waiting to be seen. Others learn how to see themselves. I chose that. I lifted my spoon, stirred the tea once. The soft chime of porcelain echoed, then faded. Even that felt like a closing line. I didn't leave behind a statue, no portrait, no headline. But I left something quieter, rooms filled with laughter, gardens full of herbs, and women who know now they are worth more than just surviving. The candle flickered one more time, then steadied. Its glow reached my hands, now folded in my lap. "Good night," I whispered, not to anyone in particular, just to everything that brought me here. Not because I was done, but because I was full. Right there in the stillness of my courtyard, with nothing left to defend, I finally understood. Peace doesn't come when people remember you the way you want. It comes when you stop needing them to. Sometimes, the hardest thing isn't letting go of the ones who forgot you. It's choosing not to forget yourself. We spend so much time trying to earn a seat at someone else's table that we forget we can build our own. And when we do, even a simple cup of tea can taste like freedom. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a feeling you don't quite have words for yet, I'd be honored to hear it. Share a line, leave a comment. This space is gentle on purpose because we don't heal in silence. We heal in kindness. And if you're ready for another quiet storm, don't miss the next story. My daughter-in-law whispered at my husband's funeral she's next, and that house was worth $450,000. Because sometimes the deepest betrayals come after the last goodbye.